All right, welcome everybody around the world. Welcome to all my subscribers. So, I've had some recent profound success with one of my new shorts on YouTube, and it's about theology, which is really great. So, I really hope that some of those new viewers will be watching this. And be sure to check all my other over 200 videos on this channel. You can watch for free various different theological topics I talk about. Each video really is a gem, and it's worth watching them all. The other thing is End Days topic. My book is available on Amazon, Seven Pillars of Scriptural Proof, and equally as important, the Systematic Theology, available on Amazon as well. But the End Days, I've been talking about it for 7 years on YouTube. Been very patient, been warning people. Was one of the very first, if not the first person to warn about 2023 and 2024 being the end days. I discovered more in my study since then, got the book published years later, about 3 years ago now, maybe 4 years ago now. Has it been that long? Gosh, yeah, I think it has. I published it before my dad passed away. Yeah, time flies. So I've been very patient, right? I've been warning people for a long time. Now, the amazing thing is, not that any of these world activities are good, they're not pleasant things, but the reality is this. They're right now in the world. We all know about the Hamas attack on Israel. It's been playing out for the last, since last October or whenever it was, that conflict and all that ongoing. Everybody's fully aware of that. A lot of people, if they've been watching the news, would know that I think it was Hezbollah or Iran, Lebanon, whatever. I think it's based upon Hezbollah. They made a threat saying that um, they would destroy Israel essentially, something along those lines. I'm not quoting them. And they showed all this drone footage showing that their drones are able to like go anywhere basically and see everything in Israel, implying that they could attack anywhere in Israel. But what everybody who's watched the news has seen that in the news that they made this threat, and they said that they would do this against Israel if Israel did something in particular, right? So it's not like they promised that they would just come out and do this, but they said if Israel does something, then they would retaliate and attack and destroy, in whatever terms they used. So everybody who's watched the news has seen that, but has it really sunk in for those who are biblically inclined? Okay, because I've been warning people for 7 years that the end is 2023 or 2024, as I detailed in my book. Okay, and now that we're in 2024, okay, mind you, in 2023, that conflict started, right? But, anyways, in 2024, what we see in the news right now is what I just said. Now, a lot of people may not realize, and I've got videos on this, it may or may not be in the book. I talk about Gog Magog or whatever, but it's definitely in my videos. But Gog Magog are a symbolic term for these nations that will rise together as opponents to Israel in the end days, and they will attack Israel. I made recent videos where I went through all the verses in the scripture at length, like long videos. I'm keeping this video short here, right? But the important thing is that in these chapters, Ezekiel 38 and 39, God fully describes how these nations, even names which ones they are. Okay, that's like something I think is breezed over everybody's heads, because everybody's got, especially Christians, have theories of who Gog and Magog are. I mean, you don't have to have theories. It tells you what nations they are. I just went and fact checked to the world map to see what countries they are now, and it is the very countries that are in conflict with Israel or at disputes with, they oppose Israel, in whatever fashion. So literally the prophecy is played out. But the other important thing, like I mentioned in the videos, is that none of this stuff could happen until Israel was reborn. Because you have to remember, back when the Bible was written, depending what age you're in, you had the first temple, that was destroyed. Most of the prophets of the Tanakh lived before that time, or some of them during that time, right? I can't remember offhand when Malachi was. He might have been a bit later, like 400 BC, but almost all of the Tanakh prophets were before or during that first temple destruction time, right? And the short period after. Then we had the rebuilding of the temple with the second temple, which stood for however long that was, and it fell in around 70 AD. But then for 2,000 years, basically, okay, pretty much 2,000 years, you've had the exile, where they've been scattered, the people of Israel have been scattered out of Israel throughout the world. And it was foretold by the Tanakh prophets that in the end of days, Okay, Israel would be reborn. Jesus spoke about this and said that when his disciples questioned him, what is a sign that you're coming and all this? When Jesus gave his speeches about the timing of the end and his arrival, he said that when the fig tree, which is Israel scripturally, puts out new shoots, meaning when Israel is reborn, it means that Jesus is nigh and imminent at the doors. And like I've said before, 75 years to us might seem like a long time, but to God, a day is 1,000 years. So 75 years is under 2 hours. So, the heavenly army could very well be ready. Okay, like a hair trigger ready. Like a zing, super quick response. They're waiting. They're at the door. They're ready to go. Right? They're just waiting under 2 hours to jump in and start the action. Right? That's the heavenly perspective. Right? So down here on earth, it's easy to overlook all that. But Jesus said, and the Tanakh prophet said that Israel would be reborn. Okay. Jesus added to that, saying, not added to it, but he added extra context to it, saying that when Israel is reborn, I am nigh and imminent at the doors. It doesn't mean he's going to arrive when Israel is reborn, right? But he's imminent and at the doors. So 1948 was the rebirth of Israel historically. It plays into quite a few, if not half of the prophecies, the 7 biblical prophecies that point to 2024. It's a penultimate key date. So I'm not going to yak about that to explain because that's going to take half an hour, right? But it's a very important date, 1948. So in all those other prophecies, right? Like it's a hinge point for all these other prophecies that God gave about the timing of the end, right? So 1948, the rebirth of Israel. So all these things that the Tanakh prophets and Jesus said, everything that the Bible says about the end days is only going to take place after Israel was reborn. Now they had to wait 2,000 years for that. Nobody back then who wrote these Bible books, even New Testament times, they had no clue that Israel would be reborn again. It was just like a well wish and a hope. They wrote about it, they foretold it, teach their own the prophets, and it did come true 2,000 years later. In fact, certain peoples in the world had tried to exterminate the people of Israel with the Second World War. At the end of the Second World War, at the end of the Arab War, Israel was reborn in 1948, and the ingathering of the people resumed, the Christians and the Jews resumed going back to Israel and living there legally, rightfully, because it was legally a nation again. It had been reborn. One of the most famous and important dates in Jewish history, right? And in world history, really, you could say. So, 1948, Israel was reborn. We should be expecting these things to happen after 1948. If we go read Ezekiel 38 and 39, he's talking about a time when Israel is reborn. Okay? Now, that's only happened once in 1948. So, if you believe the Bible, Ezekiel 38 and 39 are talking about this short period of time after Israel is reborn. Now, in 38 and 39, he's not telling you any time spans like, oh, it's going to be X 100 years or 75 years. He didn't say that. You get all those numbers from the rest of the Bible. But also, looking at world events right now, we can see that these things are coming true right now in the year 2024, which is the 75th year of Daniel's prophecy and everything else. And that is when it's all due to happen. The judgment day, the arrival of God and the Messiah and everything. So I'm not going to read Ezekiel 38 and 39 again. I have it here for reference in case I want to check over to it real quick. But these are the nations that God says are going to rise up against Israel. He says Persia, that's Iran and Iraq, if I'm not mistaken, and Phut or Put, P-H-U-T. I don't know how you pronounce it, right? Foot, right? That was actually the land. I checked biblical maps and then I checked the current world maps. So Put or Foot was above Israel. That's Turkey today, okay? And you got Lebanon just above as well, right? Because all the borders in ancient times changed over time with the clans and the tribes as they conquered and migrated and moved and expanded or shrunk. It gets very complex, right? But Put was above Israel. Persia, everybody knows what Persia is, okay? And Cush was Africa, okay? And then it says Togarma of the sides of the north, right? And if you look at the ancient maps, Togarma is up at the top. Oh, sorry, no, I got mixed up there. Put was Libya. I apologize. So Cush and Put, that's Africa. Persia, the Middle East. Togarma is the one that's above, that's currently Turkey, and Lebanon a little bit lower down. In Syria, right? So all of those current nations are these ones listed here in that prophecy. Persia, Cush, Put, Togarma, okay? is literally the nations. And if you read those chapters or go check my recent videos where I read the chapters at length, it's all about those nations they're going to emerge together as a force to attack Israel. They'll surround Israel. I think it even specifies they'll surround Jerusalem and they will attack it. Bad things will start to happen, like they will start the attack, but then God and Messiah will arrive with heavenly fire, hailstones, which is probably like a meteor shower, meteor strikes, right? Which lines up with the New Testament prophecies, what the end days will bring. So this is what the Bible says will happen. The Bible and Gog Magog are spoken about in Revelation as well by Jesus. So New and Old Testament agree, as I've always taught, as I talk about in my books. So the Bible reveals that the final domino here before God and Messiah arrives is literally this Gog Magog war. Okay. And according to my beliefs and teachings, 2024 being the end should be the year that we would expect these things to happen, right? 2023, 2024, because of the 12 months flux you have to allow, because we don't know what month of the year a certain event took place in, like I always say, right? So, and we do see these things happening. Okay, the October attack was very much like what is written in the prophecies that are said to happen when they invade and attack. And then, like, such as in Zechariah. But nonetheless, more importantly, in 2024, with these other threats from these other nations, it's just all coming to fruition. And people have to understand, this is going to be for a separate video because it'll take too much time. I already made a video about it. I just perfected the list a little bit and structured the order a bit better. But there's over 24 things. It's probably at 25 now or more of prophecies that have been fulfilled. Okay. Things that were said by the prophets about the end days and this and that, they're the timing of them, or things that must take place before the end days. And all of these things have been fulfilled historically, like perfectly. Most of them I talk about in this book, right? A lot of I know all of them are talked about in this book, but I compiled them all in a recent video. So because I tweaked that list, I'm going to make a video. I don't have time right now, but later tonight, I'll make that video, right? But like 24, 25 prophecies have been fulfilled, one after the other, at the right time, specified in the numbers and all that. All these things, impossible for people to just guess and get right. But all of them have been fulfilled, right? And out of this 25 or so, you could just pick one or two, such as the prophecies of Daniel that I go through in the book here. And the odd, because they're so complex as well, the odds of just one of those 24 things coming true is just astronomical. So we have so much evidence. Like if you think of it like a line of dominoes in terms of, the Bible and all its prophets foretold that certain things will take place before the end comes, right? And you consider them as like dominoes of prophecy. When the domino tips over, means that prophecy came true, right? Well, all those prophecies came true in order on the timeline of what was supposed to happen when, and this and that there. They all came true. And it's like ding, 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 ding. All the dominoes have fallen over. It's gotten to the last standing domino, which remains to fall over, which is Gog and Magog will attack Israel. Okay, who is Gog and Magog? Well, it's not a mystery. I just read the list of the nations that comprises it. It's the Islamic nations, okay, which ties into, like I show in the book, Islam is the final beast kingdom. Okay, Daniel foretold all the specific things that would transpire with the formation of the final beast kingdom, about its founder, and all those things historically came true, right? But all this stuff is blown over everybody's heads for near 2,000 years, it seems. Everybody today, at least, is oblivious to it. But I'm just letting people know, like I've warned about it personally for 7 years, but these things are actually happening in the world right now. You can't turn a blind eye to that. And if those nations, if those nations do go up and attack Israel, that's the last domino starting to tip over. Okay, it'll be halfway tipped over before it totally tips. The Messiah will have to arrive. Whether God visibly comes here in some way, it's not for us to know. Maybe he comes here in some form, or like his power arrives here. I'm not fussed about that, but at least it's going to be the judgment day, and the good will be redeemed from the destruction, and the wicked will be punished. That's the major emphasis, right? And the hope for a better tomorrow after that, if you deserve it. That's what everybody hopes for with the end of days, to go on to a better place and have a better existence, free from sin and all the woes and all of that there. And we will have to wait for that to transpire, for that domino to tick. But guess what? Like I said, Don't lose your hope. You got all those other dominoes that came true. All of them have come true. Intricate prophecies distinctly made over 2,000 years ago, like every single one of them, except for some of the New Testament ones, but that's still 1,900 years ago, near 2,000, right? So, fair enough. These prophecies, all of them, all the ones in the book, all the 25 altogether, the 7 core prophecies, like 7 pillars, right? 7 core ones, and all the 25 altogether, they've all been all but that last one have been fulfilled. So, in all common sense, like I've said before, if you got a line of dominoes and you hit the first one and they all fall over, what do you think's going to happen to the last one? It's going to fall over too. So, we should almost expect this last domino prophecy to come true. All the other ones have come true, right? All the other ones have come true. So, this last one, in all rights, should come true. And it's playing out, it's happening, right? It seems surreal, even somebody like me who's believed and expected it and pretty much wanted it, that not those specific things to Israel, but just I want the end of days to come so we can go on to a better world. I've wanted that for so long. To me, it seems surreal that these things are happening in the world because it's like it's actually happening, right? So, like I said before, it's just like a hair trigger away from these final things breaking out, because all it's going to take is somebody to anger somebody else, and then any one of those other opponent nations is just going to start the attack on Israel. And they will very well, based on their behavior and what they've indicated so far, these opponent nations, they will gang up against Israel, right? That could almost be expected and assumed. And when that happens, folks, I'm telling you, you better be watching and ready, okay? Because it could very well be the time. I mean, if all that happens and Messiah doesn't come with the judgment day, I would be absolutely shocked. There's no way that all those prophecies get fulfilled coincidentally. There's no way. Okay? You got 7 prophecies like I have in the book that pin down specific periods of time. Just one of them, for example, prophecy of Daniel from chapter 12, saying 1260, in chapter 12 and chapter 7, we're talking about the 1260 year period, which is the 3.5 times, right? The events did not take place 1262 years apart. From the Dome of the Rock in 688 to 1948 is 1260. Now, if the prophecy had said 1260, but Israel was reborn in 1950 instead of 1948, it would be 2 years off. And even by my standard, like I say in my book, I don't allow for 2 years. It's got to be the exact digit. When I'm doing my maths, I'm doing the prophecies and it's got to be exact to the singular digit 1. It can't be 2 years off, right? So, yet 1948, an unchangeable world event, Israel was reborn exactly 1260 years later. So when you look at the lineup, the 7 core prophecies, there's many places where any one of these prophecies could have failed, but yet didn't, right? Very easily could have failed or not been precise, but yet all of them were. And it's not just the 7 core ones, but the whole together, the list of 25 things all together that were foretold and came true. Any one of them could have failed to come true and would have cast doubt on the whole package, right? One of the 24 things or whatever out of the list that, and let me reword that. Out of the list of 24 things, Jesus said a bunch of them probably, right? I think offhand, he definitely said at least a few. So just arbitrarily, you take one of the things that Jesus said, I'm saying, and if that one didn't pan out and come true historically in the lineup of events, then that would cast doubt on everything. But yet, all of them, everything out of the 24, and more importantly, out of the 7 core ones, everything is taking place and fit to the numbers, because each of the 7 are numbers that God has given in the Bible. It'll be this long, he says, to blah, blah, blah. Okay? We had all opportunity for these prophecies to fail if they were bunk or inaccurate and i.e. not credible, right? But the very fact that they have all come true, if you had some brainy mathematician crank the numbers there, I'm pretty sure it'd be astronomical, and there wouldn't be a calculator screen capable of holding all the digit places, right? The odds of this coming true by chance, if these prophecies are fake, it just can't happen. Okay, so, and like I mentioned in the book as well, right? Numbers and interpretations of verses can throw people off, be like, oh, maybe that's just your interpretation, and the emphasis doesn't really sink in. Well, how about this? things outside of my control, outside of anybody's control. At the same period when Israel was born, like I point out, these are minor things, but depending on certain people's skepticism, right? 1948, right? It wasn't just that Israel got reborn. Like I said, it was the end of the Second World War. It was also a war where they tried to exterminate the people of Israel, right? 1947, 1948, they found the Dead Sea Scrolls, i.e., they found copies of all the biblical texts, hundreds of years older than any of the old, some of them 1,000 years older than any of their texts that they had prior. So it validated the Bible. Same time period. 1947, 1948, all these UFOs started showing up around the world, observing and watching. Whether they're good, whether they're bad, whether they're both, who knows, whatever. It's not for us to argue. None of us are up there, right? But all of these things, big, profound things have been taking place in that same period, right? Period. So you see my point? These are things outside of people's interpretation and control. You know what I mean? These are visibly happening. Dead Sea Scrolls are real. That's not an interpretation of numbers. You know what I mean? That happened, 1947. Roswell and all the other UFOs started showing up 1947, 1948. Technology exploded 1947, 1948. All these different things, technology is insignificant compared to this, but I'm just pointing out all these major changes around 1948. Okay, it's the final generation. 1948 also, one of the pillars of prophecy here from the book of First Enoch, which I have great evidence on my channel here for it actually being canon. Is some of my oldest videos on this channel. They're very worth watching. Put a lot of work into them. But nonetheless, from First Enoch, there's the great prophecy of 4,900 years. It tells you when to start the measure from, 500 years before the flood. Using the Bible chronology that I map out in chapter 1, which also proves 2024 is the end of 6,000 years, you can see that I think it was 2951 BC. So 4,900 years later leads you to 1948, right? The end of 1948. So, and that's the prison sentence for the fallen angels. Enoch says they'll be imprisoned under the mountains of the earth for 70 generations, which is commonly interpreted 4,900 years. Anyways, read the chapter if you want for a further explanation, breakdown, or reasoning of that. But 4,900 years later precisely leads you to when? So at the end of 4,900 years, the fallen angels, in theory, their prison sentence is up. Okay, what happens at the end of that time period in 1948? Oh, we just had the World War. And then all these UFOs start showing up, good, bad, maybe both. You see my point? I mean, everything on the world stage is fitting in with these prophecies. You can't make this stuff up. So I think, with my own righteous skepticism, not righteous, but like wise skepticism, that I think by all reasoning, we should be expecting these things to happen. So I would be highly surprised if they didn't happen. Maybe it's going to be in early 2025. Maybe be a few extra months for some unforeseen reason. Maybe it's going to be another year off for some unforeseen reason. I cover some of those things in a chapter in my book. But nonetheless, we're ripe in the times for this to be taking place. The other thing to keep in mind is this: if they do mount an attack against Israel, and then it stops, and Messiah hasn't arrived, and all of that, and we don't see meteors crashing down, you might be wondering, well, what's going on? Is it all failing? Well, just be patient and wait. You know what I mean? I just got inspired with this too, because I just thought to myself, what would I do and think if that happened, right? So that could just be a first phase of attack. You know what I mean? When you read Ezekiel 38 and 39 and Zechariah as well and such, if Zechariah is talking about the same time period, which seems to be, it could be a prolonged attack. It doesn't say anywhere it's going to be instantaneous and everything's going to happen in one instant, right? So wars are always drawn out. Conflicts are drawn out. This is conflict already ongoing, has been very long and drawn out. You could even say it goes back to 1948 as well, right? But my point is if something does happen on that biblical level and then Messiah doesn't come right away, don't give up hope, right? We're still getting close. Every time one of these prophecies is getting fulfilled, like the meter of its fulfillment is just climbing up until you hear ding and it's totally fulfilled. Every step up that meter it goes, we're getting closer. You know what I mean? So don't just give up the hope after all these things have come true and then that, right? So anyways, not that I want bad things to happen in the world. I just want the Messiah to come, God to come even, and for everything to be made right. right? Hopefully, I've reformed well enough to earn salvation, and hopefully, everybody else has reformed and be worthy enough to earn salvation. But that's what we can hope for, is a better world. And you can't have a better world when all these wicked people are running around doing all this wickedness. The evil and the sick evil and crimes and wickedness of people in the world is just escalating as well. I mean, that's another thing. Um, that's not proof the end days are coming, but it's just like, it's definitely a sign, you could say. Just the evil is just rising. Something has to be done. Something has to be done. And the only thing at this point that could be done with, you got all these other nations too, right? I wouldn't even mention their names. Everybody's sensitive. I don't have anything against these other nations, but I wouldn't even mention them, right? But certain other nations in the world are in the news making threats. I mean, the whole world is a buzz like this, right? In the year that I said for 7 years now that the end is coming. So be ready, waiting, and watching. That's all I can say. I told my mom the other night and my family, I've been holding back and not really sharing all the stuff with them. They got a copy of my book, but they haven't studied it. You know what I mean? I'm like, I tried to tell her, you know, a lot of people, you know what I mean? Even your loved ones, they're not geared in to this. And I warned my mom, I said, don't be caught by surprise. I don't want you having a heart attack because all these things start happening. You see meteors coming down to the earth, right? People have to be ready. Ready is not just a play on words. You got to be ready. Be ready for all this stuff, right? Be ready, waiting, and watching. And if you ever have doubt, and if you're ever thinking, well, maybe I'm just talking a pile of fluff, it sounds convincing, but maybe it's not going to happen. You know what I mean? Maybe 2024 rolls by and we're in 2025, and it's just like, you know what I mean? Just remember what God said in Daniel 12, right? He said, blessed is he who waiteth earnestly and has come to the days, the years 1335th. Blessed are you, you go on to your lot at the end of days, right? This is going from memory on the verse. Just remember that. Sorry, I have an itch. God didn't tell us that for no reason, okay? And like I explained in the book here, I know a lot of people are going to probably throw snowballs at me in 2025 and say, oh, it didn't happen. It may have happened by then, but I'm just saying, in case it doesn't happen, I know a lot of people are going to do that. People have done that because what I said about 2023. But I've always said 2023, 2024. But like I do detail in the book here, if it doesn't happen in 2024, there are, in the chapter here, logical, scriptural based with verses, few, right, reasonings why it could possibly be pushed another few years, right? It's not baseless, it is based upon a few verses. Okay, so such as Psalm 90, where it says, the years of our generation are 70, or they're greater than 70 years, but less than 80 years. It says it's cut off hastily and we fly away. Cut off hastily would imply 75 years, which lines up with the prophecy of Daniel, 2024 being the 75th year from 1948, the rebirth, right? So everything neatly fits with 1948 and 2024. Everything, all the numbers, all the prophecies. So I think it's most likely that it will happen in 2024 or, early 2025 type thing. In terms of it being a year or 2 or 3 years off, you could stretch it and say, well, Psalm 90 kind of gives a flux range. And in Judaism, if you ever listen to rabbis teaching, they always say that God gives like a fork in the road, two options. If you're good, you'll get one outcome. If you're bad, you get another outcome. Or if you're in the middle, you get a middle outcome. It's not just like a one-way street. So that might be why there's a range. If things get that bad, maybe God will come sooner. If they get better, maybe God will come a bit later. If there's more need for more people to be saved and they deserve it, they're getting close, and maybe God will give a bit more time. Maybe he has allowed a span, right? But nonetheless, right, if it's not in 2024, based on Psalm 90 and some of the other reasonings in that chapter, such as the date of the Dome of the Rock, it started being built and it was commemorated in 688. That's the official date even in Islam, where it's recognized as being created and dubbed and all of that. However, it took about 2 or 3 years to build, right? So you could argue, oh, well, you could add 3 years to it, because from the abomination, the 3.5 times 1,260 years. The problem is, then that stretches it past 1948, okay? And then you start being less precise, and you start having to flounder for fluffy reasons as why, oh, well, 1951, I've been there, done that, examined that, and all of that stuff is like fluff, right? 1948 and 688 In 2024, all that fits laser precise, right? And all the prophecies, the 7, laser precise, connect to one another, right? So 2024 looks like it, okay? But if there's this stretching or condition-based stretching of the time or whatnot, which may be possible, then maybe it could be another 2 or 3 years. I really don't want to have to wait. After waiting 7 years right now, I don't want, from when I started teaching, I've been waiting for this since I was like 18 years old in general. But after, as of teaching, waiting 7 years, that's a long time to be warning and saying something's going to happen. I don't want to have to wait another 2, 3 years. You know what I mean? But what can I say? I mean, if God said to me, hey, guess what? The end of days is actually coming, that would probably make me shiver in fear. And he might just say, well, it's just going to be 2 or 3 years later than you thought. That's still terrifying. You know what I mean? It's still the end of days, even if it's a few years off. So, if 10 years in the future it hasn't happened, maybe then we can give up hope. But I'm really thinking it's going to be 2024. When you got these world events clocking over like this, fitting in place, then I'm sorry, but it looks like it's going to happen. And don't be fooled by the peace and surety you might have in your life right now, because the Bible says, Jesus warned, it'll be like that, like the days of Noah, like the days of Sodom and Gomorrah when they were destroyed. And what was the other one? But in either case, those two, he said, people will be oblivious. You'll be living your normal life, making merry, doing this and that there, and then it'll be sudden destruction, just like with Sodom and Gomorrah. So don't be fooled by this. It depends where you live. You might be in a bad war-torn country right now, right? But, just saying generally, arbitrarily, don't be fooled. Don't be fooled. So anyways, take care, folks, and God bless.